Hello everyone and welcome to my talk on accounts and addresses, an introduction to using the Metamask dApp wallet on Nervos. This is going to be a pretty easygoing basic one for beginners. If you're already using the Metamask dApp wallet on Nervos, this is probably not going to be too beneficial for you, but if you're just getting started, this is definitely the video you want to watch. My name is Jordan. I'm a senior software engineer for Nervos, and I've been a software engineer for a little over 20 years now, and I've been in blockchain since about 2011, and I've been with the Nervos Foundation since 2020. On the agenda today, first we'll start off with the basics. What are private keys, and what is an account and address? Then we'll move into MetaMask itself, talking about what is MetaMask, and how do we install MetaMask. And then of course, how do we configure MetaMask for use with Nervos? And lastly, we'll actually use Metamask to send some basic funds around and to interact with the dApp. What are private keys? A private key is a large random number that is used in cryptography similar to a password. It's a secret that only you know. And so that goes with the name, private key. You keep that private, you tell it to absolutely no one, because anyone who has access to your private key has access to everything that is owned by that private key. Now there's a counterpart to this, which is called the public key. That's completely safe. You're free to give out the public key to anybody, and they can do nothing to recover your private key from it. It's virtually impossible to guess. Now, I said it was a large random number just so you see exactly how large that number is. We'll go over to Wolfram Alpha here. So one of the most common cryptographies is to use 256-bit encryption. That's 2 to the 256, which is this gigantic number here. I'm not going to even try to pronounce that because it's absolutely colossal. So going back to the private keys, it also allows you to prove ownership. Now this is one of the most important things about it, and this is used extensively in all cryptocurrencies. That's the basic of it, is what is the point of the private key and the public key. It allows you to do that ownership. And so when you receive assets of any kind, they are assigned to your public key in some way, shape, or form, usually. And because you can prove with your private key that you own that public key, that it is the corresponding pair, then you can prove that you are the owner of the actual asset. So that's the real basics of it. Of course, there's a lot more to that. The cryptography itself is very, very complicated matter, but in general, it's pretty simple on the surface, as in you have a public key, you have a private key, and then you use something called cryptographic signing, which is the actual cryptographic process in which you actually show that you are the owner of the public key, which in turn says, yes, I'm the owner of the asset. And then sometimes, not in all cases, but sometimes, especially in certain blockchains in certain cases, they also use this system to prove identity. Because if you're proving ownership of something, you're effectively saying that you are an individual of some kind. So they're in different contexts, it's used differently, but it's a pretty common thing that you can use it in some way, shape, or form to prove identity. And so here's just an example of a private key. Of course, private keys are always supposed to be private, and this one is no longer private, so I assure you there will be no funds on this one. I will not be using this, and none of you should absolutely not copy this as well, because this has been exposed. So this is just an example of what one looks like. Now in actuality, when you're using wallets, and we'll go into this a little bit later, they're going to do all this management for you, so you probably will never actually even see your private key. What is an account and an address? An account is used to associate a private key with ownership. An address is a human-readable label used to receive assets. So accounts hold assets, addresses convey location information. I think that the easiest way to picture this is maybe a safety deposit box at a bank. The safety deposit box itself would be your account. It holds assets, multiple assets. Whatever you want to protect, you can put into the box. And addresses convey location information. That would be the number on the safety deposit box. And you could, in theory, go to the teller and ask where is the location of this box, and they'd be able to point you to it. Accounts and addresses are implementation dependent. What that means is that the actual definition of what they are is slightly different sometimes depending on whatever chain you're running on. And this actually exists in the Nervos ecosystem as well. on our layer 1, the definition of an account is actually slightly different than on our EVM layer 2. And addresses, those are pretty unique, but how they're actually generated, that can be a little bit different story as well. But in this talk here, we're pretty much just going to be dealing with EVM, so we're going to stick to that. We're just going to stick to the layer 2 today. In EVM, an account and address are one-to-one. Like I mentioned in some of the layer 1s, it could be a little bit different, in which case there we sometimes have one account that contains many, many addresses that are associated with it. In EVM, it's a little bit simpler. It's just one account to one address. So that's what we're going to be talking about a little bit today, once we actually get into the Metamask wallet. And here's just an example. This is an example of an address. This is what an Ethereum address looks like, and this is what we'll be using on our layer 2 as well. What is Metamask? Metamask is the most popular dApp wallet used to manage assets and interact with dApps on EVM-compatible chains. So if you look at the screenshots on the right here, on the left side, that's the Metamask extension, which is a browser extension that runs in your browser. That's the original version. That's what we're primarily going to stick to today. And on the right, that's the mobile version. So one of the most important functions of a wallet is that it manages your private keys. Like we mentioned before, a private key is this really, really big random number, and it needs to remain a secret. It needs to remain secure, and it has to go through this big cryptographic signing process, which is something that you can't do by hand. That's something that can only be done by a program, and so the program to do that is your wallet. It also manages your accounts. You can have multiple private keys and multiple accounts. There's no problem with that, and this will give you multiple, potentially like identities. And so if you have all of these private keys and these different accounts, and all of these different accounts could have different assets in them, you need a way to manage that, so a wallet helps you do that in a very simple way. It also helps you manage your addresses. On EVM, it's actually one-to-one. It's just one account, one address. So a wallet allows you to send and receive assets. This, of course, is one of the most basic and essential functionalities available. When you want to receive something, you need to be able to give the sender the address so they know where to send it. And once they send the asset, you need to be able to view that asset. Then a wallet allows you to interact with dApps. Now, there's a difference here. There's a difference between different kinds of wallets. For example, you can have just a crypto wallet, which just holds assets. It allows you to send and receive, but it doesn't actually interact with a dApp of any kind. You can't do any smart contract functionality. And so Metamask, one of the reasons it's so popular is because it is a dApp wallet. It's one of the most used dApp wallets. So it allows you to manage your assets, and it also allows you to interact with dApps in a secure way. Once you're ready to get started, the first step is, of course, to install Metamask. So to do that, you just open up a web browser of your choosing. So go up to the URL bar and type in metamask.io. Now you notice I typed it rather than searching for it in Google, and that's because if you search for it in Google, sometimes you get scam sites that come up as the top result, and if you download from there, you're going to lose everything that you have, because the wallets are compromised and they're designed to steal your assets, and they look exactly the same. So I always recommend going directly to the site using the URL bar metamask.io. And now that we're on the site, we can click the download button, and we're going to scroll down to install Metamask for Chrome. And this has redirected us to the Chrome Web Store, and we can do the same types of basic checks here to make sure we're in the right place. We see we're at chrome.google.com, secure site, and then the extension itself, we want to verify that this is the right extension too, because just like in the search engines, the web store itself can actually have fake extensions in there that are designed to also steal your assets. So we see this one, it has a check mark on it. It's featured, it's got a couple thousand reviews, and it has over 10 million users. This is more than likely the correct one, so we're going to go ahead and add that to Chrome. Hit the Add Extension button. And this sometimes takes a couple seconds, and there it goes. It's downloaded, and we're ready to get started. If you have a recovery phrase, this is where you would use that. And we'll cover exactly what that is in just a moment, but we're going to create a new wallet this time, since we don't have a recovery phrase. And you should definitely read all of this text here, but since we're short on time, I'm just going to go through it. Create a password. And this video here is definitely worth watching, but I'm just going to skip it because we are short on time. Okay, and this is your secret recovery phrase. This is basically like a private key. It actually generates your private key from this recovery phrase, which means that this is very secret. You definitely want to keep this completely private and read all of their tips here. It says to store this on a piece of paper in secure locations. That's definitely a good way to handle it. And if you ever see a site or somebody claiming to be from tech support asking for your private key or your secret recovery phrase, either directly or they tell you to go to a website that says type this information in, those are almost always a scam. So I recommend that you just remember that anytime anybody is asking for a recovery phrase or a private key, or even a website is asking for it, unless you absolutely know what you're doing, do not give it to them. So you want to write this down, and then on the next page, okay, so on this screen, we're actually asked to verify it. So this is just verifying that we've actually written it down properly. So go ahead and you click through all the buttons to do your recovery phrase here. Okay, I've typed in my phrase. I'll confirm that, and our wallet is installed. Now that the wallet is installed, we just need to configure it for Nervos. How do I configure Metamask for Nervos? In the last step, we installed Metamask, but it only has settings for Ethereum by default. We actually have to put in a new configuration so that it works properly on Nervos' layer 2. So to do that, we open up a web browser and go to startwithnervos.com/godwoken. Now here, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll find some of the settings that we need, the RPC URL and the chain ID. And this would allow you to put it in manually into the configuration here where you can add a new network. But there's actually an easier way, and that's how we're going to do it today. So we're going to cancel this. We're going to close this window. We're going to go to Godwoken Bridge. And the reason we're using this site is because this is going to allow us, we're going to use it in a later step to get some funds so that we can move them around. And when you go to a dApp, typically one of the first things that it makes you do is switch to the proper network. And if you don't have that populated, it's going to populate it for you. So we're going to have it do that automatically for us by connecting the wallet. And we'll connect that. Okay, it's connected. And now if you see, the network URL and the chain ID are actually the same as were on that page. And this is going to allow you to just add it automatically. And we'll switch to that. And there we go. We're now set on Godwoken testnet version 1.1. And now there's one more setting, and this is kind of optional, but I generally recommend it, is we want to add the PCKB contract. So to do that, we need to copy the address here, the contract address, go into Metamask, import a token, paste in the contract address, and sometimes it will populate this automatically and sometimes it won't. If it doesn't, you can just type it in just like this, PCKB and 18, add custom token, import tokens. Okay, and we'll go back to the main screen. Okay, and so now we have the PCKB token, and this is actually the same as the CKB token, but it's actually required for moving them around on the network because there are a couple minor differences between Ethereum and Godwoken, and this is the workaround for that anyway. We'll go through that more in the next step. How do I send funds to an account? So in the last step, we configured Metamask to be able to use Nervos, and now we're going to send some basic funds. So to do that, we're going to open up a web browser to Godwoken Bridge, and I'm just going to quickly show the wallet here. So you can take a look at the address here. It ends in 3AC7, and you can see the same address is here. So it's reflected on the page. This is our layer 2 address, which is used for Godwoken, which is Ethereum compatible, and that's why it says Ethereum address. And you'll see another address here, the layer 1 wallet address. This is the layer 1 equivalent of this Ethereum address here. This is also linked to your wallet, but it's for use on layer 1. So the first thing we need to do is get some funds. So to do that, we're going to use the layer 1 faucet, and for that we need the layer 1 address. Okay, so if we go over here, you can actually go to the CKB testnet faucet, just paste in the address, hit the claim button, and you'll see it's pending here. And this usually takes maybe 30 seconds, maybe a minute. Sometimes it can take a little bit longer, just depending if there's a lot of traffic. So we can close this now that it's going through. We'll refresh this page, and now we have 10,000 CKB. So we're going to move some of those to layer 2. And I'm not going to do all of it. Let's do 6,000. Okay, it'll ask us to sign this message, and make sure you only sign on sites that you trust. This is going to initiate a smart contract to move these funds from our layer 1 address to our layer 2 address. And you can see it just pending down here. And once it's done, it's going to show in the completed. So this can take sometimes several minutes, maybe 5 minutes maximum, and we just need to wait for this now. Okay, the transaction is now confirmed, and if we look at the layer 2 balance, we now have 6,000 CKB there. And if we open up the wallet, we should also see 6,000 CKB here and 6,000 PCKB down here. Now the CKB and the PCKB are the same exact thing, except that when we're dealing with layer 2, it's technically PCKB, and layer 1 is actually the real token, the CKB. Now, the reason that we had to add this second token here is because there's actually a minor difference between the Ethereum mainnet and Nervos and the way that it handles certain things, and we can't actually use this button here. We can't use the send button to send to other people, only smart contracts. So to actually provide a means, a workaround to send, we had to add in the token again here. And if we use this button here, this send button, then we can actually send no problem. So we'll just paste in an address that this is a known address of somebody that I'm sending to, and we'll type in an amount here. Let's type in 1,000 PCKB. We'll go ahead and we will send this. Okay, we'll confirm the transaction for 1,000 PCKB. Okay, now this can sometimes take a minute or two to actually go through. Okay, the transaction is now confirmed. And that's the basics of how you send from one account to the other. How do I interact with the dApp? Well, the easiest way is to just head over to one of our most popular dApps, which would be the Yokai Swap DEX, and we'll just go ahead and do a basic trade. So the first step is to connect your wallet using the red button in the right top corner. Click on Metamask. Now we need to connect our account to the site, and again, we're just going to select the one account that we want to use. We're going to use account 1. Go ahead and connect that. Now you can see that the last 4 digits of my account are actually up in the top right. That shows that it's connected. So now we'll go to Trade, Exchange, and we'll swap some CKB for, let's do USDC on the Ethereum chain. Let's type in 100 CKB that we're going to swap. It's telling us the price down here, and we'll hit the swap button. Now we get a confirmation screen. We'll take a quick look at that. Everything looks pretty good. Let's confirm the swap. Now it's asking us to actually confirm it in our wallet. And when you do this, this is going through that signing process. It's using your private key to sign it, and it's authorizing the transaction to this site. So as long as you are on a site that you believe is to be legitimate, this should be a safe thing. We can see what's going on. It's sending 100 CKB. We're going to go ahead and we're going to confirm this. It's submitted our transaction. And it went through very quickly this time. It says it's already successful. So now if we go into our wallet, we can see that the contract interaction here, this is a pending transaction. So it's on its way through. We just need to wait. Sometimes it'll take a minute or two, sometimes a little bit longer, but usually just a minute or two, and this should confirm. Okay, so our transaction is now confirmed, and we can actually see our balance here that we have 100 less. If we click back over to the Asset tab, you'll see that we have also 100 less here. And the reason it's a fraction here is because we actually paid a little bit of a gas fee. And so this number here, the PCKB, is technically more accurate here. This is just, it's displaying this because it's rounding. And if we wanted to go back the other way, we would do similar process. USDC, ETH, you can see now it displays my balance. And let's swap all of that back to CKB. Now this is going to ask you to enable the contract. This is giving it access to the actual USDC token. Make sure you only do this again on sites that you actually trust. We're going to go ahead and confirm that. Usually a little bit of time. It's got to actually approve that, so it may take a minute or two. Okay, so the transaction has gone through, and now we can actually see on the screen that everything is authorized, and it's giving us the button here to go ahead and swap. So I'm going to swap my 20.9 USDC on the ETH chain to CKB. This is the reverse of the previous swap. We give this a quick look. Everything looks good. We confirm it. Yeah, the Metamask window pops up. Sometimes it takes it a couple seconds to pop up there. Okay, we're going to confirm this. Transaction is submitted. And it may take a couple minutes for this to go through, but that's the gist of it. If you need the URLs that were used, this is where you'd want to pause the video. These are the 4 URLs that were used today. And that's all I got for you guys today. Thanks for listening. I hope you found it helpful.